The royal family is shrouded in mystery and secrecy. Here are 5 unusual facts about the royal family.
Number 5. Queen Elizabeth II and her husband are cousins. Queen Elizabeth II and her husband, Prince Philip, are related in not just one, but 2 ways. Both Queen Elizabeth and Prince Philip share the same great-great-grandmother, Queen Victoria. Prince Philip's relation to Queen Victoria is on the maternal side. His mom was Princess Alice of Battenberg. Princess Alice's mom was Princess Victoria of Hesse. Prince Victoria of Hesse's mom was Prince Alice of the United Kingdom. And Prince Alice's mom was Queen Victoria. Queen Elizabeth is also related to Queen Victoria through paternal lines. Her dad was George VI. His father was George V. George V's dad was Edward VII, and Edward VII's mom was Queen Victoria. This makes them 3rd cousins. But they are also 2nd cousins once removed through the King of Denmark. Both of their fathers are descendants of Christian IX. Queen Victoria herself was also related to her husband. Her husband, Prince Albert, was her 1st cousin. Number 4. They have really weird food customs. The royal family has some pretty odd customs when it comes to food. The Queen herself has food restrictions throughout the castle. She does not allow the consumption of garlic or shellfish of any kind, so no one in the royal family is allowed to eat those things. But they are allowed to eat 7-year-old cake at christenings. It is a tradition in the royal family to eat a slice of their own wedding cake during their child's christening. Apparently, there are strict rules governing the wedding cake when it comes to royals. The bottom of the cake is to be served and eaten during the wedding. The middle of the cake can only be eaten after the wedding. And the top tier, it's saved for future christenings, even if those christenings are a decade down the road. But the strange food traditions don't stop there. Apparently, the royal family is weighed both before and after Christmas dinner. The tradition stems from King Edward VII's reign. He was really concerned about the health of his family, and he wanted to make sure that they ate enough during Christmas dinner, so he declared mandatory weigh-ins. The tradition is still kept today, and every member of the royal family has to step on the scale both before they tuck in for supper and after they've eaten their fair share. Number 3. They must accept every gift given to them. And they get some strange ones. People all over the world are eager to show their affection and appreciation for the princes, princesses, queens, and kings of the royal family. The Queen, especially, is regularly sent gifts from both members of other noble families and from commoners. But did you know that members of the royal family have to accept every gift they are given? They are not allowed, under any circumstances, to decline a gift, no matter how odd, inappropriate, or encumbering the gift is. Furthermore, members of the royal family must make note of every single gift they are given, from the large and lavish to the simple and small. This is because even though members of the royal family must accept their gifts, they are not actually allowed to keep them. They may use their gifts or wear their gifts, but the gifts themselves actually belong to the royal collection, which is overseen by the Queen. So what do you give a queen or a king? Well, the Queen receives an assortment of gifts every year, ranging in modesty from simple bouquets to expensive exotic animals. And where some of the gifts are pretty standard, like jewelry, some of the gifts the Queen receives lean a little towards the strange side. Some of the stranger gifts given to Her Majesty include a sticky note holder made of solid silver and a large year-old bull elephant named Jumbo. Number 2. They have no last names and nicknames are not allowed. Queen Elizabeth's legal name is Elizabeth II, by the grace of God, of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, and of her other realms and territories, Queen, Head of the Commonwealth, Defender of the Faith. You'll notice that there is no last name there. That's because members of the royal family do not officially have last names. They are usually just known by the name of their royal house. In the past, though, kings and queens were known by the names of the countries that their families ruled over. All other royal members were simply known by their first names. But in 1917, King George V changed all that by adding Windsor to his name and declaring that all male descendants would be known by their first name and their house, Windsor. Females in the family who married could take a different name based on what their husband was called. It still wasn't technically a last name though, as it was a reference to their house and dynasty. The house name Windsor continued to be attached to royal first names until Queen Elizabeth II and the Duke of Edinburgh decided in 1960 that they wanted their descendants to be different. They decided to keep the Windsor title but add Mountbatten to it. So the Queen's descendants have Mountbatten Windsor attached to their first names. Of course, this still isn't really a last name, it's more of a two-house combo. And speaking of names, since so many members of the royal family share similar names because they are often named after someone else in the family, you would think that having nicknames might clear up some of the confusion. But members of the royal family are not allowed to have nicknames. Although rumor has it that they do it anyway. The Queen herself is known as Lilibet and Cabbage, of Mountbatten Windsor, of course. Number 1. The Queen has countless quirks. Queen Elizabeth II is the longest reigning monarch ever in Britain. As such, she's surely earned the right to have a few quirks. Like her nail polish, for example. Apparently, in 1989, the Queen's personal hairdresser saw a bottle of nail polish that she thought the Queen might enjoy, so she ordered a bottle of it for the Queen. The hairdresser was right. The Queen loved it. So much, in fact, that she's been wearing it ever since. The nail polish is called Essie Ballet Slippers. It's a fairly delicate shade of pink, and the Queen's been painting her nails with the same brand and same color for over 20 years. She doesn't go anywhere without it, just as she doesn't go anywhere without her handbag. The Queen has developed a clever signaling system via handbag. The Queen uses her handbag to signal to her guards and security. If the Queen is bored at an event, she places her handbag on the table. This signals to the staff that the Queen wants the event to end within the next 5 minutes. And if the Queen is out and about, but finds herself caught in a boring conversation, then she places her handbag on the ground. This is a signal to her staff that she wants to be rescued from the conversation. Another odd quirk of the Queen is that she actually has 4 alcoholic drinks a day. She enjoys a gin and a dubonnet before lunch. With lunch, she sips on a wine. Before dinner, she indulges in a dry martini. And after dinner, she downs a glass of champagne. She needn't worry about her blood alcohol level though, because another quirk of the Queen's is that she carries her own blood with her when she travels. It's customary for royalty to travel with their own personal doctors, but the Queen takes it one step further by actually bringing her very own personal supply of blood, which is not only the most unusual quirk of the Queen's, it might also be the creepiest. In any case, the Queen's unusual quirks finish off this list of top 5 unusual facts about the royal family. Before we close out today's video, we have a couple honorable mentions that didn't make the list. Honorable mention. For honorable mention, here are some of the more unusual facts about the Queen that didn't quite make the list, but that are fascinating in their own right. 1. The Queen doesn't need a passport. Every single passport in the UK is issued in the Queen's name, so technically, the Queen doesn't need one. She's free to travel anywhere in the world without a passport. The same goes for a driver's license. The Queen doesn't need one of those either, although she does drive. 2. The Queen has 2 birthdays. The first birthday is her actual birthday, the day she was born, April 21st, 1926. But the Queen also has a second birthday, which is on June 11th. June 11th is the birthday that the country celebrates, and it's held later in the season because the weather is nicer and more conducive for outdoor celebrations and parades. 3. And finally, the Queen actually owns all the swans in the UK. Well, all of the unmarked mute swans. And no one outside of the royal family is allowed to hunt or eat unmarked mute swans. In fact, the warden of the swans and the Queen's swan maker keep track of the swans. Every year they round up all the swans and count them, making sure they aren't injured and that their numbers are steady.
I hope you enjoyed today's video, narrated by Greg this time. Be sure to subscribe for more, and check out some of our previous uploads.